Welcome to another episode of More Than a Lawyer, where we celebrate and learn from those who are successfully doing more than one thing. I'm your host, London Lewis, and today we have an extraordinary guest. I am so excited to introduce him. He truly embodies the spirit of a multi-hyphenate. Our guest today is my dear friend, Doug Melville. He is a man with a career so expansive, so diverse, so impressive, he could be the modern day Forrest Gump. Doug was the Global Chief Diversity Officer at Richemont, the parent company of Cartier, Van Cleef & Arpels, Chloe, among others, but recently left to follow his passion as the CEO of Jodie AI, a personal learning assist company focused on inclusive AI. But that's just the tip of the iceberg with Doug. His career began as a male cheerleader at Syracuse. You got that right, male cheerleader, not football player, where he landed an internship with Quincy Jones and became the tour manager of, get this, Britney Spears' Hit Me Baby One More Time tour. I'm sorry, I had to say it. He even coached Kendall and Kylie Jenner. That's right. Basically, I'm 1 degree from someone who knows the Kardashians. Okay, guys, we're in the building. He sat on the exec team of Magic Johnson's Enterprise and was the president of one of his companies, was also, not to name drop, but an advisor for President Obama's first campaign before he was president. And he founded redcarpets.com after getting advice from some key Google execs. We're going to need names later, Doug. This was all before Doug entered the diversity and inclusion space. He then became the Global Chief Diversity Officer at TWA Chiat, working with major brands like none other than PepsiCo, Apple, Airbnb, and H&M, just to name a few, on their diversity and inclusion strategies. And if that wasn't enough, Doug is also the best-selling author of Invisible Generals, a book that's about his grandfather and great-grandfather, who were America's first 2 Black generals. American history, guys. This is insane. Oh, they're also the creators of the Red Tail, so, no big deal. Today, we'll dive into his incredible journey, insights into the writing and publishing industry, because he has some insights into those. We were talking earlier, and his thoughts on, of course, diversity and inclusion, because he's the go-to for all things. I'm happy to introduce my dear friend, Doug Melville.
Hey, yeah. Thank you, London. I appreciate it.
I'm like, man, that was a workout.
I know. I was like, London, just, paraphrase, but we're good. But, in life, sometimes you do many things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why I was so happy to have you. I think you were one of the first people, in 2021, when I came up with the idea for the podcast, I was like, Doug, you're going to be my guest. And you actually, fortunately enough, was so generous with your time. You did like a practice run through with me back in 2021.
I remember.
We did it like hotel room style. I had the mics. And then I was just like, no, we got to do bigger. We got to actually do this in a studio. Shout out to my favorite podcast studio. For those of you, DM me if you need the name. Because everybody's asking, and I'm like, guys, no, I need time here.
No, this podcast studio is actually really incredible.
Isn't it fire?
The team here and everybody here in LA and Hollywood is incredible.
Thank you.
But, I want to say when we did that run through for this idea that you built, and I'm so proud of you, is I think one thing we all have to do that sometimes we skip in the step is proof of concept.
Right.
Or a pilot. Do it once or twice or 3 times full through.
Yes.
Feel it, know it,
yes.
Get the energy around it, and then you can perform it at a high level, because sometimes people just say, hey, I have an idea, we should do it. But actually what you should do is prepare it, set it up so it could be successful at scale.
I love it. That's like such gems, and that's why I did it then, and the proof of concept, and thank you for being that guest.
Yeah.
So Doug, your career journey is so incredibly diverse, as I just listed so many things that I think I left out, even the Hilfiger stint. It's just like too much to name. But can you share what inspired you to take on so many different roles and how you managed to excel in each of them? Because it's like, no matter what, wherever you go, you always leave with like grace. Everybody wants to still be in touch with you. They're just like, whatever he does, he's going to do something big. So like, how did you take on so many roles, and then how did you excel at them? Because that's so unique.
Yeah, I think the thing about it is 7 years ago, I started lecturing at Stanford Graduate Business School for a class called Reputation Management.
Love it.
And I think when I started working with them to become more academically aware of my journey, I started to put the dots together to see what were the connective tissues,
Right.
what were the areas. And at Stanford, I talk a lot about the pivot principles. You know, most people go back to graduate business school so they could pivot their careers. So I think the big learning is, what attributes, ingredients, superpowers do you have that you're able to transfer from one career to the next that become the transferable skills that are associated with you? So your particular brand reputation. And I think my ability to move from role to role was, you know, consistency, reliability. I have a good way to have a personality and communicate with people. So orator, always showing up early or on time, which is 50% of the role.
Yes.
Always being available. So I think a lot of the things, most of the times we're unsure of those qualities within us. So we dedicate them all to one career.
I love that.
But the reality is those are pivot principles, and those are part of your brand reputation. So if you choose to, you can do other things and realize that the fundamentals that made you successful in a previous career or current career could actually help you, because everything is really all connected, but we're told the narrower you are, the wider your reach. And I think when we grow up, people are told less is more, focus on one thing, which is true for some. But for others, the transferable skills allow you to have a plethora and a breadth of experiences in your professional and personal career that are unmatched by one particular industry.
I love that so much. I mean, that makes sense because you literally live by this. I mean, I can just admit that you were very early to this interview. So I was just like, oh, Doug's already there like 30 minutes early. That's amazing. So shout out to you for that.
Good.
Early, consistent. So today you are the CEO of Jodie AI. And AI is such like a very expansive, it's like the prevalent hot topic right now. Everybody, I don't feel like there's an industry AI hasn't affected. And so how did you pivot into that industry, and what were your learnings?
So I was living in Geneva, Switzerland the last 3 years, and one of my assignments was to travel to 40 countries at my role to understand what is equity around the world.
Oh, wow.
So instead of just learning about it through Google or watching videos or Instagram, you know, of different things, what would actually happen? And I appreciate my company so much for flying me to spend a week in each country, go to the museums, go to the sites, meet people, and understand what is equity around the world. And when I came back, what I realized is the biggest challenge to the conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And by the way, around the world, the term equity is used much more. Human rights, social capital. They don't. The word diversity doesn't really translate very well in other languages.
Interesting.
And I realized that the biggest deterrent for people to learn was they don't know what to say. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to get canceled. English is their second or third language, so they're not necessarily comfortable pronouncing or enunciating words and phrases. They don't know where to put the accents. They don't know how they sound. So there's a lot of people that are really unsure of themselves. Generative AI, I thought, was a way that we can now scale DEI around the world by allowing everybody to be an inclusive leader, to allow everybody to be able to open their phone, ask Jodie a question. And even how we came up with the name Jodie, we went and we looked at the 5 words most associated with equity and equality around the world. And it was justice, opportunity, diversity, inclusion, and equality. And those 5 letters spelled out Jodie. So
That's
that was really
brilliant.
how we looked at it. And then when we
Yeah.
got a little farther into it, because I knew nothing about AI, I never worked for an AI company. I never
Right.
trained a model, but I
Right.
spent 100 days with our programmers, all developers of color from 5 different countries, to
Wow.
program a model that was built on inclusive AI, phrases, language. And what you're
Mm.
realizing is a lot of these models out in the world today are executing against big, large LLM and AI models, but they're not actually taking the time to fine tune it to ensure it's inclusive. So how
Wow.
Jodie AI works is that you can subscribe to it with human capital and subscriptions, bring it into your
Right.
company, and you can
Right.
have 10 or 12 or 15 people have a Jodie license.
Right.
And you could also call us and we'll answer questions to help you get over challenges that may come up around your equity. So it's not just a robot
Oh, I
or a
love that.
chatbot, it's actually
Right.
human capital as well. And then on the other hand, if you've built out an AI model,
Mm-hmm.
you can now add Jodie on top of it to help ensure that your
Oh.
answers are inclusive. So someone needs to be at the front end of this. And I felt that it was the time for someone to take a leap. And that was,
Mhm.
really when I joined Jodie AI as the CEO.
I mean, it makes so much sense now that you say that because I'm just like, you're right. AI, it has to have the human touch in order to ensure that it's like the responses are inclusive. Because I've even tried to use, and I won't name this company because I don't want to disparage them, but like I
Mhm.
used an AI, programming template to try to like create a deck. And I was like, oh, include like diverse images. And sadly, the images like for
Mhm.
the Black people looked like animals. And I was just like, oh, I mean, this company needs to like do some work
Mhm.
to improve the images. And I actually just mentioned this on an at an AI angel investing lunch and learn, and they were just like, yeah, this is like a space like people need to invest in the space to be more inclusive and diverse to ensure that they're actually using real people's data, real people's research in order to make sure that they're actually capturing people of
Mhm.
color and like you said, other nationalities, how they say things like that. Like that's key. And so thank you so much
Yeah,
for
it's really
doing the work.
important. And I
It's
think
really
actually
doing the
for
work.
us,
Mm-hmm.
executives, people our age, people climbing the corporate ladder to
Yeah.
become CEOs and executives in their own right,
Right.
this is a huge opportunity because fine tuning the models and
Mm-hmm.
helping ensure additional resources can be added on to the open AI platforms is actually an
Right.
area we should be focusing on because if you're a lawyer, there's different versions that are essentially built on top of OpenAI that focus on law and
Right.
design
Yes.
and sound engineering and
Right.
travel and all the other different verticals. And ours was on DEI.
I love
And
it.
there's a statistic that I just want to share. There was 3,500 companies that received $20 billion in VC money that were AI focused in the last several years
Oh
in
my
Silicon
gosh.
Valley, and not one was focused on inclusive AI. So when you see that this is a real literal blind spot and it was something that I was
Right.
passionate about, and we'll see where this evolves to, but I think for all
Yeah.
of us, it's important for us to keep being continual learners. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that means using your pivot principles and strengths to go into different industries.
I love it. You're
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
basically the human form of that. Now let's go back to the start though, because as I mentioned in your introduction, you started off as a male cheerleader at Syracuse,
Yeah,
which I
yeah.
love this story by the way. But then you landed an internship with none other than Quincy Jones. How did these early experiences shape your career path?
Yeah, I think I skipped 2 grades, so when I
Okay.
got to college and I wanted to play football and be a walk-on, I was
Yeah.
just too small.
Yeah.
I'm against guys, and I wasn't really familiar with something called like a fifth year or like a red shirt. So
Right.
you're up against guys that are 22, 23, 24.
Oh
I'm
wow.
16. So you're talking about 6 or 7 years of workouts, 6 or 7 years of hitting drills. So I
Ooh.
really didn't have a choice. I had a choice, but I didn't have a chance.
Exactly.
And the coach said to me, maybe you'd be interested in being a male cheerleader. And I tell you, London, I wanted to drop the guy right there. I didn't even know what that meant. I never even heard of it. I
Right.
never even heard of it or saw it in my whole life.
I mean, you might have been the first of your generation.
I
'Cause
mean,
I'm
and then
like,
he said, no, it's good. You could travel with the team, and I go to tryouts, and I'm actually really good at it. It was like one of those things where you don't know you're good at it until you
right.
actually attempt it.
Yes.
So I go and I become a cheerleader in college.
Mhm.
and I traveled with the football and basketball team. And essentially, you stunt, you hold the people over your heads, you're on the bottom of pyramids, you get the crowd going and things. So you learn how to be, extra positive energy.
I love that.
And between my junior and senior year, I really wanted to get an internship because I was so nervous I was going to be unemployed. And through a friend of a friend, I was able to get an internship at Quest Records here in Burbank, California, where I would become one of Quincy Jones' final interns before he kind of left the record label. He was doing at the same time QDE, which was his production company. So he had 3 television shows. He had Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Jenny Jones, In the House, Mad TV. That was 4. And then he had Quest Records. So it was like Tevin Campbell, Tamia,
My favorites.
things like that. So I was just really a fly on the wall. But one of the things that Quincy Jones taught me, because he was like a Yoda figure, I was the youngest guy there. I was working for free. And I remember he said to me one day, he goes, Doug, you work harder than people I pay. But that was what I realized, showing up early, being consistent, being on time, showing up tight and right. That actually qualified for something. And that was, I wanted to work in music, but if you can't sing or produce or anything, and he shared with me this piece of wisdom. He said, 1/3 of your life you're spent sleeping, 1/3 of your life you're spent working, but what you do with the last third separates greatness from failure.
Ooh, that's a message.
And he was like, you're gonna sleep and you're gonna work,
Yeah.
but that last third. And that was the third where you create things. That's where you become the multi-hyphenate. That's where you become more than. And that always stuck with me as something I never forgot.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Jules from Quincy. And I love that you remembered it. I'm like, of course, that's brilliant. So you mentioned you wanted to work in music, but of course, no singing talents. I don't have them either. But you managed to become the tour manager on Britney Spears' first tour.
Yeah.
Can you share some memorable moments from that time?
So that was actually set up by Quincy Jones, who connected me with some people he knew, the Hilfiger family, and they were sponsoring the tour as the tour sponsors. And I got the opportunity to be assistant tour manager on the Britney Spears Hit Me One More Time tour. And it was a huge thing because, I was, never had been on a tour. It was all new. Everything was new. The part about it that I loved the most is that we were all young.
Yeah.
She was 17 or 18. Wow. I was 21. Wow. The opening act, Michael Frito, who became my best friend, he was in it. He was 20 or 21. His brother Joe. There was all these different people on the tour. And everyone it was their first kind of opportunity. And we were so excited that we had a tour bus driver.
Right.
We had one cell phone that you couldn't use unless it was an emergency. So we played board games.
Stop.
It was so not like it is now. It was no posting on the gram and anything. It was when you're in the bus on a road trip, you're traveling.
And you're connecting.
You're learning each other. Wow. And my job was to make sure, the dancers, catering, checking into the hotel. So the proper tour manager takes care of the production, the trust, the setup, everything.
Right.
And then the assistant tour manager takes care of the support, the radio winners, the wardrobe, all the things that kind of make the tour go around. So for me, that was amazing.
Fun.
And when Britney Spears hit the Rolling Stone cover, that iconic cover that you remember or maybe don't remember, that was when the tour really went,
Oh my God.
And she became Britney Spears. Because at the time, there was Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Mandy Moore, Jessica Simpson, NSYNC, LFO, 98 Degrees, Backstreet Boys. Remember, there was a whole slew of people. There was Michael Bublé, there was Michael Frito, there was Boys and Girls, there was just like an influx. So no one really knew who was going to hit,
right,
or what was going to be the result, or how this is all going to turn out. But it was amazing.
I just remember her iconic video with with the private school uniform. I'm just like, that I definitely dressed
Hit
up
Me
like
One
that.
More Time.
Yeah.
I used to ask her, I was like, Hit Me One More Time. Is that a domestic violence song? And she would say, Doug, I didn't write that. Because I was like, what is this song? Hit Me One More Time. What is it?
Like no physical hit.
Yeah. But the actual song was called One More Time. But I actually thought it was called Hit Me One More Time. But the actual song is called One More Time. Yeah. But we're all young. We didn't even know how it worked. We were just asking questions.
Right.
I remember her 18th birthday. We had a crazy 18th birthday party at the Standard Hotel on Sunset.
Oh, wow.
And I remember Hugh Hefner came and he
God.
brought his 5 wives. Remember before he had the 3 on the show, he had 5 or 7. He had a whole thing.
Oh, geez.
And I remember he was trying to woo her to go into Playboy magazine. And that was actually the first time I realized that, this was larger than I actually thought. We're kids essentially on tour and doing our, the most and living and like exploring and growing.
Yeah.
But it was sometimes when we hit LA, that was when we realized there was like a whole outside force.
Right.
And actually a funny moment from the tour, and then we'll move on, but was with Kobe Bryant. So I was so nervous that day. It was her first show in LA. It was my first, time being a tour manager in LA. And when we were coming down from San Francisco, they made a huge announcement. They were like, Doug, everyone's going to be at this show. This is the major show. Her birthday parties, we're going to celebrate the sales and the whole thing. And I remember the late, great Kobe Bryant was in the front row and we were doing a sound check and I was so flustered. Oh, no. And I remember he just kept going like this with his hands in the back.
To help
and was like, calm down. And we finished the sound check and I go in the back room and Kobe Bryant is there waiting for me. And I have a picture with him and we could put it up during this podcast.
Yes.
And he comes and he puts his arm around me and he's like, you got to calm down out there. We're both new to this town. Oh. He's like, it's all good. We're just getting started. And he goes, do you want to take a picture? And he put his arm around me and we took a picture. And it was the only picture I took in LA. It was one of the few pictures I took on tour.
Right.
And I never forgot it because I was like, what was he? He was there so early.
Yes.
Because we were doing a sound check. And it was really my one time. I never met Kobe Bryant again. And that was, around his rookie year because it was like 99.
Yeah.
The summer of 99. And I just remember that so much.
Shout out to him for that.
He was really a genuine guy. No one really knew who he was at the time. He wasn't starting for the Lakers. And I just landed here today and saw how many murals of him and his daughter around LA and, how many tributes are everywhere.
He's definitely the giant here. He is an icon. Oh my gosh. How fortunate are you to have been in his airspace?
It was just a really unique situation.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
You're in LA, you never really know.
You do. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Speaking of you never really know. Mm-hmm. So you've also coached Kendall and Kylie Jenner in cheer and to working with Magic Johnson and being president of one of his companies. You've worked with some many high-profile individuals that I don't know if you even recognized or realized at the time, but of course, hindsight is 50-50. How did you adapt your leadership style to such varied environments? Because that's a little intense. I don't know if I'm that young, how could I know how to carry myself around these people,
Well, I think, one of the mentors that I had, Tommy and Andy Hilfiger. Tommy Hilfiger has a brother named Andy Hilfiger. Yeah. And Andy Hilfiger is the architect of Tommy Jeans. So Tommy Hilfiger was really more the suit person and the designer. And his brother Andy was more the musician, more the hip hop guy. And he really was more into the jeans collection. Right. But when the Britney Spears tour was sponsored by Tommy Hilfiger Corporation, Tommy Jeans, and Andy Hilfiger was really involved in a lot of it. And I have to tell you, this family, which I did not know, and I met just on tour. Wow. Now, Quincy Jones had introduced me to them, so I had some introduction. It wasn't blind. Right. But they were really my mentors. And the one thing that they would always tell me was how you judge success and how others see you and judge success are two different things. So when you start an assignment, when you start a job, ask, what is success for you? What defines success in this role? What do you want at the end of the tour? What deliverable will make you feel good on the last day of the tour? And what I started getting the habit of doing is this practice, which was just to say on your first day of the job, discuss the last day. And it was counterproductive, but it was a mature thing. But it was because they told me in a world where everything is chaotic and nothing is really linear and there's information and data and everybody knows everybody's political and it's this, how do you actually operate in an environment of success? And that was knowing the last assignment before, the day before you start. So I would always go in and say, what do we need to do here? What do we need to do here? And the more you would meet with people that were high profile or entertainers, a lot of times people that work with these individuals may not do things with the fundamentals. They get comfortable, just like anything. You get comfortable, you're around family, around friends.
Yeah.
But this was an opportunity where I said, what are we looking here to do? What is the objective? How do you want people to feel? What do you want them to do? And how do you want them to act? There's an exercise called feel, act, do. So on your first day of your job, you say, okay, when the assignment's over and I present this, what do you want the audience to feel? What action do you want them to take? And do you want them to do something, proactive? And this allowed me to really understand what people expected from me as a newcomer and a rising star. And also the other thing, London, was remove your ego and remove your name. And this was something that was a little controversial at the time, but it was, if you want to go farther, faster, don't worry about getting credit.
I love that.
And this was something that at the time, your friends would be like, you don't want to get credit. You're doing this, you're working here, you're doing that.
Right.
But at my stage, it was all my friends were just, coordinators out of college.
Right.
They're not really doing much. So for me, it was, if I can get farther faster, then that would be better for me to build relationships and not worry about taking the credit. But that allowed me to move in rooms where people knew he has no ego. He doesn't want the credit. He knows what the deliverable is, and he's consistent and shows up. And that allowed me to pivot to new rooms.
Oh my gosh. That was life-changing gems right there. I feel like I'm going to replay that over and over, because I feel like you have just helped me think about maybe I should be approaching every role in this way.
Yeah. No, we're just getting started.
We're
Linda.
just
still
getting started.
Hit me one more time.
Exactly.
Like 1999 all over again.
Oh my God, I love it. Okay, so as a strategic advisor for none other than President Obama, before he was President Obama, during his first campaign, what insights did you gain about the political strategy and leadership? Because I feel like that industry is still very much I don't know. I think of House of Cards. Don't ask me why. I probably shouldn't quote that. But it's just, it's a little everything is very much everything is zipped up. Everything is high level, 40 feet tall, looking down. So what were some of the learnings that you gained or insights from that?
Yeah, I think my biggest learning from the time I spent with Senator Obama, because, he was third in the polls when I was introduced to him. He was John Edwards, I think his name was.
Yes, I remember.
It was Hillary Clinton, and number third in the polls at that time for the Democratic Party for the ticket was Senator Barack Obama from Illinois.
Wow.
And I think one of the things that the one thing that I learned the most was he would always say, Douglas, the key to being a good politician is know how to tell your story. And he would say, you have to know how to tell it in a room of people that like you and a room of people that hate you. You have to know how to tell it in 30 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 minutes. You have to know what notes to hit. You have to know what pulse to trigger. And the thing is, now when I look at politics, I feel like the politicians now know their stories so well that they don't listen to the questions. I feel like this superpower is too strong. You know how you see people on the weekly show?
Right, yes.
And no matter what question they ask them, they have an answer that's it's like another question. So that was the first, and that was the biggest, the most important rule.
That's interesting.
And when I spend my time up at Stanford, one of the things I do say is, do you know how to tell your own story? And I tell people you have to practice this, because people aren't good at the story. If I say, hey, London, we're in an elevator, if I know I have 30 seconds, and I say, hey, London, what's your story?
Right. Your elevator pitch.
Yeah. You say, hey, I'm London. I'm originally from LA. I host a podcast. I'm a legal expert. I'm born and raised. My favorite country is this.
Right.
And a fun fact about me is blah, blah, blah. But people don't have it ready.
Right.
And I think this is a huge detriment to people because they don't realize the importance of being able to tell your story succinctly. And make it relevant to the room. One of the things I learned in advertising was if the audience doesn't listen, then the message never happened. Where in a lot of corporate environments, people say, hey, I put it in the email.
Right.
If London doesn't want to click it, It's in there.
Right. I CYA'd.
I
it's in writing.
CYA'd. I CYA'd.
Yeah.
I sent the email.
Right.
But now the way I was raised was if no one reads it, it didn't happen. So when I tell people don't waste these opportunities, because most opportunities I got were from meeting somebody, moving through rooms, before you could do it on Instagram, you had to do it in real life.
Right.
And then the second thing I learned from Senator Obama was understanding the rule of 1/3. So in politics, there's a rule called the political rule of 1/3, which means that when you go into a room, generally speaking, how you should address the room is 1/3 of the room loves you, 1/3 of the room despises you, and 1/3 of the room doesn't even know why they're there. They were someone's friend. You invite them to a fundraiser. You know how you'd be like, hey, can you just come with me to this thing and just hang out? So when you speak to a room and you know that it's 1/3, you're supposed to set your eyes on a particular person, and typically of the undecided. And the goal is to get the room that doesn't know why they're there, or that are undecided or not, fully vested in what their opinion is, and encourage more of them to like you.
Interesting.
And then when you leave the room, you could win it because you have 51% of the people that like you. So you're supposed to actually identify and look when you look over the room.
Right.
And you're supposed to find and identify someone who you feel is undecided, and then give them eye contact to try to encourage them to lean towards you. And then that's kind of how you address a room of 1/3. So I use this all the time, every time I speak or go into any meeting, because it's generally right. When you go into a room, 1/3 love you, 1/3 don't like you, and 1/3 don't know why they're here.
I love this. Shout out to the podcast listeners. I hope you know why you're here.
The podcast listeners.
That's hilarious. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Okay. That's another gem. I'm just like, now I'm going to approach, like when I'm doing keynote speaking and stuff like that, I'm going to approach it using these tools and see how it goes. But that's interesting. That's brilliant.
Even when you write your bio, what I
Yeah.
tell people is write a 25-word bio, 75-word bio, 125-word bio, 250-word bio. But actually how you should write it is you should write the first paragraph is 25 words, then the next one's 50. And then when you send it to someone, say, hey, my bio is broken down in pieces. If you only have a little room, if you want to introduce me, use the first one, then the second one, because people just send these bios because they don't know how to tell their own story.
Yes, that's brilliant. And I mean, even just, I was actually getting some advice just on my LinkedIn profile. If I want to be targeted for more keynote speaking, they were like, this is what you should say in your about me section. This is what you should say in your featured section. And you're just like, oh, I didn't know there was a strategy to it.
Yeah,
and that's
There's
brilliant.
a whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. Look
Yeah,
at
all
you
right,
dropping
look
more
at that.
gems.
We're
I learn
going
something
here.
every time I'm with you. Okay. So you founded redcarpets.com
Yep.
after getting advice from two key Google execs. What was the inspiration behind this venture, and how did it evolve over time? Because that's also like red carpets. How did you decide to enter into that?
Yeah, so the years I was able to and I had the honor to work for Irvin Magic Johnson, I was the head of his business development team, and then also the president of one of his companies. And one of the things he would always talk to me about was the importance of track record, the importance of over delivering, the importance of but he had one insight that I never forgot. He goes, Doug, when you enter a market, it's most important to fill demand, not build demand to fill it. And the example is, when he started investing in Starbucks, he goes, people want coffee already. It's just the locations aren't in the neighborhoods we are.
Right.
But there's already demand, so I'm just filling it. Where if you open, for example, a sports store, which he would give an example of, you have to get people to go to a sports store. There's all these other sports stores. So first you have to build demand, then fill it. And that double sales process usually bankrupts founders.
Oh,
because it's usually how the second company usually is more successful than the first. So Blimpie subs came. No one knew they wanted sandwiches, so they have to build demand for sandwiches. But while they do that, all Subway has to do is fill it.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
Yahoo built demand for search, and all Google had to do was fill it. So when this was something that I learned, and I always wanted to start a company on my own. And I had already been working now at this point, you know, over 10 years.
Yeah.
And we had a speaking engagement up at Google. And afterward, I got to talk to Larry Page and Sergey Brin, who were the founders.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, you know, if you had an idea for an entrepreneur that wanted to start a company, what would it be? And they said, you know, we'll tell you a secret. You should go to google.com. I remember I never forget when they said you should go to google.com. I go, now, this has to be a joke. We're in Google headquarters. Of course, I'm going to go to google.com.
Right.
But there was actually google.com/labs. And it's since changed. But at the time, they said, you know, you should look at all the categories that we sell ads. And you should make a company in reverse based on keyword search. So when you find a category you like, and for me it was entertainment, and the most keyword search was red carpets.
Makes sense.
So he said, you know, he said, go on there and find it and then make a company backwards. And then over the course of 3 years, you'll automatically come up first when anyone searches the word, and then you could sell your product or service. And then there was all these examples of this, and I started looking into it. It's like the guy that created vacuumcleanerbags.com, you know, all these things that people would Google.
Yeah.
And they became the master of it. Yeah. And they just would fill the orders. So I said, oh, wow.
Brilliant.
Red carpets. And so I called my friend. I said, oh, we should start a red carpet company. And then we were like, well, what are we going to sell? And we were like, wire image photos or this and that. And then we were like, you know what? Red carpet.
Yes.
Why don't we actually sell the physical carpet and then design some step and repeat backdrops and then roll them? So what we did is we created like a patent pending bag, like an oversized yoga bag. Then you would put a red carpet inside, and then you would design your own backdrop and we would roll it in, and it would be like a book bag. And then you could have a red carpet and a bag, a party to go.
Yes.
And we went for 3 years, and we didn't sell any of this idea. And I spent all my life savings and all the money that I earned doing all these other jobs.
Oh my gosh.
And then Albie Manzo from Real Housewives of New Jersey asked if we could red carpet his apartment for the season premiere of Real Housewives of New Jersey.
No way.
And I said, only if we could put our logo on the backdrop.
Yeah.
And he goes, if you guys do this for free, you can put your logo on the backdrop. In London, just like that, thousands of these things we were selling. Then Clarence Cosmetics, they were having trouble having people try on cosmetics in the department store.
Yes.
So we set up mini red carpets in the cosmetic section, and then the iPhones were coming out, and you could take a vertical photo, and then everybody could be a celebrity in their kitchen, in their den, in their dining room. So it was a made to order red carpet kit. And we started selling these things by the thousands. And we still have the company today, 15 years. So what most people don't realize is that, you know, if we're hyping up Black-owned businesses, most people don't realize most of the red carpets sold in the United States are actually from my own company. And it's a, you know, diverse-owned business. So, you know, people don't even really realize this. But, you know, I could go on and on about the red carpet and the history of it and Sid Grauman. You know, the first one was rolled out in 458 BC. 500 years before the calendar we use. So there's a huge history of the red carpet that it was always attractive to me. But everybody wanted to be broadcasters or talent, but I actually wanted to provide the carpet.
I love it. Mr. Red Carpets, guys. This is incredible. I mean, this is brilliant because when I was just like in my office the other day, our team for an exercise, we do this list of, you know, let's just look at Forbes' top lists. And so we just were like, oh, who's like the top 10 billionaires of today? And when you look at like Forbes' list and you look at the industry or the field that they're in, you're just like cement, sugar, like things that people wouldn't think of. And you, red carpets, I would have never thought of that. Like, that's brilliant. And I mean, great advice from Google execs. Like, I see why. I wish that google.com/labs still existed.
yeah, I don't know if it's still there. I don't think so.
Like, darn. Okay, so we're getting close to the end. 4 more questions.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. So at TWA Chiat Day, which is one of my favorite advertising agencies, you became their first global diversity chief. Well, their first global chief diversity officer. What challenges did you face in that role? Because you were the first, right? So it's like you said, um, the first company usually it's harder, and then the second company does better because they're just filling the supply. So
Mhm.
you were the first. Like, how did you overcome these challenges, and what were they?
Well, I think, I think 12 years ago, or I mean, there's been diversity officers for 20 years, but in
Yeah.
mostly military, automotive, more,
Mm-hmm.
kind of more industrial or
Oh
raw
yeah.
material industries. The
Yeah.
creative industry didn't really have a diversity officer.
No.
And excuse me, when I started, I think one of the biggest learnings was my why. And I think that's something that
Mm.
we don't really talk about. Why are we doing
Mhm.
this?
Mhm.
When I went on my job interview for Richemont, they asked me the CEO asked me two questions. Why do I want to do this job? And what is one thing I want to do outside of work before I die?
Mm.
And I think sometimes we're so into the roles, like we're so laser focused that we forget
Yeah.
why are we actually doing this really?
Right.
And what is one thing we want to do before we die, like to
Right.
give some perspective.
Yeah. What's the impact?
And I think for me, at this time, I was, at red carpets. I had left Magic Johnson. I
Mhm.
was doing well, and the movie Red Tails came out, and in that movie,
Mm.
the commander of the Red Tails, who was played by Terrence Howard, was
Mhm.
a gentleman by the name of General Benjamin O. Davis Jr., and he was the patriarch and center of my family. He raised my dad. He was my grandfather
Wow.
figure my whole life, paid for my car and my golf clubs,
Oh.
but his name was removed from the movie.
Mm.
And we never really got to the reason why, because everyone I would ask say it's Hollywood.
Yeah.
Doug, it's Hollywood. Of course his name was removed. It's
Mm.
Hollywood. Of course their amalgamations were used. But the
Oh.
reason I tell you that before I tell you the TBWA answer is because I made a
Yeah.
commitment that I
Mhm.
wanted to work for a company to ensure that those
Mhm.
people that were invisible were made visible.
Oh,
And I
I
wanted to
love
ensure
that.
those people that had been overlooked, passed over,
Mhm.
avoided, worked around, whatever the case may be,
Mhm.
were included.
Mm.
So I was connected to TBWA,
Mhm.
and they asked me if I wanted to be their first diversity officer, and neither of us knew exactly what that would be.
Right.
They were like, "We're taking a leap of faith on you. I'm taking a leap of faith on them."
Right.
And ultimately, what we agreed to do is that we would look at diversity as if it was a client. So they were so innovative in their
Mm.
approach, and they gave me so much support. And that's what's kind of missing now in the diversity conversation. It went
Mhm.
from a role in the company to help a company grow,
Right.
find new opportunities. Difference is brilliance.
Mhm.
Domestic emerging market. How can we make diversity incredible, and how can we untap and find new audiences? And what it's done is it's been so regressed right now. But at the
Interesting.
time, my assignment was, how do we connect better with diverse creators, photographers, set designers, casting directors?
Right.
How do we get, different clients in here? How do we make our commercials reflect America? So it was a
Mm.
very optimistic and opportunistic role where we
Interesting.
open things up.
Right.
But we slowly see now how diversity has changed in the court of public opinion. But at the time, it was working with our clients to make sure, the hands in the Apple commercial were diverse, or
Mm.
the Airbnb user policy was one of our clients.
Mm.
People were getting booted off the platform if they were same sex or had ethnic names.
Oh,
So a lot
wow.
of these systems, because when a company starts, they're not paying attention to this. It's
Right.
not negative. And
Right.
that's the problem. We've turned everything to positive, negative. You did this wrong. Who's to blame? Everyone's evolving,
Mhm.
but when you know better, do better. And sometimes you have to have someone on your staff that just works with the team to say, should we look at this another way? Is there another aperture we should click?
Right.
Is there another opportunity that we're missing? Is there another
Mhm.
perspective that we overlooked? Not negative, but just an evaluation like we do for every other thing.
Right. To keep
And
it
that was the way.
consistent and to keep it inclusive. Oh.
And that was how I got involved in Chiat Day, and TBWA have been, so incredible with, PepsiCo, reviewing. I remember when we launched the watermelon
Mhm.
commercial for
Mhm.
Mountain Dew.
Oh.
It was one of my last assignments before I moved to Switzerland, and
Mhm.
we had a meeting. Can we launch a watermelon flavored drink during the Super Bowl without it looking like cultural appropriation? But the thing
Right.
is, you have to ask these questions and have the meetings. I feel like now people are almost hesitant to call the meeting.
Right.
Because people say, oh, we don't want to get involved. We don't want any problems. Let's just do it. It's too risky.
Cancel
now,
culture.
Cancer culture. But, even just a few years ago, it was a way to talk and say, is this the right thing to do? If we did it, how we do it.
Right.
We had John Cena in the commercial, how we casted it, how we used animatronics and visualization and graphics. So diversity has always been to me an opportunity, and I appreciated TWA Chiat Day for allowing me to put my fingerprint and open up the conversation where now many companies are using diversity officers as almost a form of minimalization or tokenization and not giving these incredible executives the ability to shine even when it's time for their play to get called.
Right. And it's like, you hired them, so let them do their job and give the feedback because you need it desperately. So
yeah, and that's what happened with George Floyd. I feel like a lot of the diversity practitioners were turned off when George Floyd happened and the play, if we use a sports analogy, the diversity play was ready to get called, and they had been working on it for years. London, we know all these diversity officers, and they have this is what we would do. This is how we'd activate it. This is how we would launch it. This is how we would metric it. And then when the CEOs get the call and all the diversity officers are like, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. They didn't want to run the play.
Oh my God.
And that's why a lot of things got pulled back. Commitments to financial support, donations, staffing, all those things that we read about.
Right.
Because they really didn't trust the diversity officers. And these practitioners have been waiting for years.
Right.
Finding, refining, and tuning these plays to be successful. And it's really, unfortunate looking at companies at scale. Some still went through with it, but you hear and see it.
We have 3 more questions. Okay, so your recent book, Invisible Generals, is an Amazon bestseller. Can you tell us about the inspiration behind writing this book and the legacy of your grandfather and the great-grandfather? Because I know you mentioned that's what inspired you to become involved in D&I.
Yeah, so this was a 10-year passion project that started with the red tail screening and their name being removed. And this was about the story of America's first 2 Black generals. They had the same name, Ben Davis Jr., Ben Davis Sr. They raised my dad. They bought me my first car, my first set of golf clubs, and my, first Apple II computer. And they pay for my college. This is like, how you have your grandfather or your aunt or uncle or someone in your family who is really your guiding light. Wow, yeah. And when I found out that their names had been removed from history books, from institutions like the West Point graduation log, from presidential libraries, I went on a quest to ensure that they would always be visible and the story of America's first 2 Black generals would live on. And I think for me personally, the thing that was most touching was the fact that it was a father and a son. Like people have been successful throughout history, but a father-son duo. And I think when LeBron James was able to draft his son, I saw so many similarities, because the father has to help the son, but the son will find his way. But sometimes you have to use the system to diffuse the system. And that means making way for your son. And they would go on to be the creator and the commander of the Tuskegee Airmen, and they would create the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, TSA, airport security, and so many different things. But I think that story helped find my center and help me find a drive and a passion to reignite my purpose.
Oh, I love that. And it's through this experience of writing this book, like, you have strong insights into the publishing industry and the challenges faced by Black authors. What do you believe is necessary to increase the representation and the support of Black authors? Because I know that's a big passion for you.
It is. And I think, sometimes you don't realize who's looking or where your angels sit, but actually it was Charlemagne the God who was so inspirational and pivotal for me to help get this story in the universe. And he's a big proponent of Black creatives, podcasters, authors. And I think one of the things I learned in the publishing industry, and this was almost, I almost didn't know it going in. Sometimes you go into something you don't really know. Right. But, over 90% of every author in the United States of America is white. And over 40% of everybody in the United States is a person of color in some denomination, mixed race, two or more races, et cetera.
Right.
And I think sometimes we look at all the different ways we should do diversity or integrate diversity, but I think the words on paper, the written word is the most important. Most television shows are made from it.
Yes.
Podcasts are made after it.
History
Movies
books.
history, you know, all these things are based on words on paper. And if we're not having the opportunity to tell our stories in that medium, it's hard for us to build it because that's a seeding medium. When you write a book, many times you don't get a lot of monetary or financial gain right away, but it gives you the ability to get your story in the world. It gives you the ability to have a movie, license it out, you know, all the things that you know about and all the things that half the movies and TV shows we see are made based on a book.
Yeah.
Loosely based.
Yeah.
Designed by, created by, whatever.
Yeah.
And if we're not going to get into the book writing process,
Yeah.
we already are a step behind because you can't get your story in the world more often than not unless it's based on a book.
Interesting.
And I think we
makes
need to
sense.
spend a lot more time talking about the importance and the value of diversity in publishing and writing and being authors.
Yes.
Because when we talk about music or TV or film, we sometimes overlook that one.
No, that's so key. And final question, this is our lightning round. So with your extensive experience in diversity and inclusion, what are some of the key strategies or just like nuggets really quick that you believe organizations should implement to foster a truly inclusive culture?
I think what companies should do right now is take a beat. I think a lot of companies are being very hesitant until after the election. So I think regardless of what I think they should or shouldn't do, I think a lot of them are going to wait till after the election. But I think what companies should do, and I think even what we should do is our own self-evaluation. This is a business exercise that I made, but I think it's good for our own personal.
Yeah.
That's just to make, 4 boxes on the wall, and they spell out wine. WINE, right? Everybody loves wine.
I love wine.
Everybody loves wine.
Yeah.
So W stands for working, and below that is the N, it's not working. Okay? So what you need to do is take an assessment of everything that's working and everything that's not working.
Okay.
Then the I is over here, and this should be everything that's invisible or internal. So these are things that you need to fix, but let's not make an announcement about it.
Right.
And E is all the things we should engage the public about: community service, public service. And I think when you lay it all out, WINE, you can really say to yourself, okay, what's working and what's not working? What is internal or invisible that we should work on privately? And what are the subjects and the areas we should engage on? And then once you have all that written on your wall or in your whiteboard, you could start to assess, because what's happening now with the D&I conversation is everything's getting blobbed together.
Right.
It's like, oh, recruiting, supplier diversity, executives, content.
Right.
We need to take a step back and realize, okay, it's halftime. We started with civil rights.
Yeah.
We evolved to D&I.
Right.
We had good momentum.
Yeah.
For the last 10 years. Then there was a pause. Now there's an active position to stop D&I. So what should we need to do? We need to go in the locker room and we need to look at global diversity around the world to see what all the other countries are doing. We need to look within ourselves. We need to see what's working and not working. We need to see what areas are off limits, and we need to see what areas we should engage, and then we can recalibrate our D&I program for the future.
Oh my God, you just answered my do more question for the lightning round. So I love that. I'm just like, this was amazing, Doug. I mean, we're going to have to bring you back for season 2 because I just feel like we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even gone down deep, but I know it's just an hour podcast, so I'm going to respect everybody's time. But oh my gosh, Doug, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, London. It's great to see you.
Oh, it's always great to see you.
I love it. I love being here in LA. I'm so appreciative of the time and the platform, and I'm proud of you. And for all your listeners, add me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Doug Melville.
Yes.
Check out Jodie AI. I'll give you a code so you can use it for free.
We love free.
That could be our bonus today. You could,
exactly.
we can give you a
yeah,
user
download
code.
the episode. We'll give you the user
Yeah,
code
that's
for
cool. And you could,
Jodie.ai.
have Jodie help you with your D&I questions.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love this. You're so generous. I love that. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in for those video wise. This has been an incredible episode. I hope you guys have learned some nuggets. I know I have. And be sure to tune in next week when we'll have another amazing guest. I don't know if it's as amazing as Doug, but like another amazing guest who is showing us how cool it is to do more than one thing. So thank you all. Have a great day. Toodles.